Hey friends, Arch,
What's going on?
Afshin, we're here with you. We're so excited to be with you. Man, we had an amazing Sunday where we just really talked about the big E word, which is evangelism, which throws
Right.
a lot of people off. The word really means to proclaim the good news, and that's what we are all called as
Mhm.
Christians to be engaged in. Sunday morning, I preached from 2 Corinthians 5, and we talked about especially verses 18 through 20 that says, those who have been reconciled to God through Jesus Christ, those who have been brought back into a right relationship with Jesus, with God through Jesus, are now given the ministry of reconciliation. And then later it says, are entrusted with the word, the message of reconciliation, the gospel. And so, what we did Sunday morning was just to talk about, hey, if you're a Christian, you first of all have an obligation. You've been entrusted with a message that you're to deliver. You're going to be held accountable with how uh, dealt with that message. So there's an obligation, but then there's an awesome privilege that you get to be a part of
Yes.
reconciling others to Christ.
Yes.
I think both are equal to have in mind that, man, we are obligated to share. But man, it's also an incredible gift that we get to be a part of the gospel going out to the hearts of others. It blows me away that God would choose to use us.
I know.
People that had nothing to do with our salvation.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that was Sunday morning. And then Sunday night, we said, okay, we all got together at our first summer night event, which was based around evangelism.
The burgers were great.
Oh my goodness.
One at the very end, that food truck was fantastic.
What was the food truck? Where was it from? I don't know. But anyways, it was amazing. There was one that had strawberry, but that's not what we're here for.
No.
All right, so it was amazing. But the event was basically a discussion around round tables on just evangelism and some of our fears and hangups. So why don't you just kind of give a recap of that night?
Sure. So we basically asked 4 questions, and as a church got to kind of discuss those questions. The first was, why is evangelism such a scary thing? What are the different fears that are associated with taking our faith to somebody? And so that was a really helpful night for me, just to kind of reevaluate, what are my fears going into that? But then we realized the second question was, what are our motivations to share the gospel with the lost? And so the good news is there are far more motivations to share the gospel than there are fears to keep you from sharing it. And really, the gospel message itself is what helps us, meditating on that and looking to the cross is what helps us overcome any fear in sharing the gospel. And so that was encouraging. Then we talked about, who are the people that God has placed around you as an individual, people where you live, maybe in your neighborhood, where you work, your workplace, and then where you play, where do you spend time? I've joked with you before that I love to go, when I go work out, sometimes I don't like to lift weights. I'll just go in and sit in the sauna. And so we've talked about how I have conversations with people
As an evangelism venue.
Yes,
I love it.
Why not?
Evangelism in the sauna. Okay, all right, awesome.
So yeah, and it hides the sweat on
That's
my
awesome.
brow, right,
That's
from
great.
nerves, and so that's a great spot.
That's great. Hey man, I
but-
see you sweating over there. Let me talk to you about what you really should be sweating about.
Right.
That's great. Awesome.
So,
and then
we also identified what are some good questions that we can ask people to initiate those gospel sharing conversations.
yeah.
So that was essentially the night. It was,
And then you have those cards where people just wrote down names of the people in their spheres of influence.
yes,
And
exactly.
I think what I love is just that it's this, hey, it's not our job to save anyone.
No.
God is the one who is going to reach hearts, but he is inviting us to be a part. And so just to think, who are those people? Again, I'm not saying, man, I've got to say this, but I'm saying, God, I'm going to pray for these people. I'm going to love these people. I'm going to look for opportunities to share with these people.
Yes.
So it's that simple. So
Yeah.
awesome.
There's a lot of intentionality in that.
Yeah, for sure.
And actually, I'd love to just share a quick story.
Yeah.
As you know, on Saturday, we're going out to do some survey evangelism.
At 12 o'clock noon.
12 o'clock is the 15th of June at Stonebriar Mall. And so I actually took a friend of mine who was doing a lot of introspection and was just really downcast for quite some time. And he came in to visit. And so we went out to, all the fun spots in Frisco, got some good food, but I took him to the mall. And I told him ahead of time, I was like, hey, I think we need to do this. We need to go talk to people about Jesus. And that practice can be encouraging to your soul. And it proved to be true. I mean, we had some great conversations. And my buddy was writing down, as kind of a scribe, I would ask the questions and he would write down their answers. Well, after about 5 or 6 people, we had this young woman was walking past us. And I said, excuse me, miss, would you mind taking this survey? It's like a worldview survey, just 3 questions. And so she said, sure, doesn't take much time. Why not? Well, I said, what were those questions? And so I turned to my buddy and I said, what were those questions again? And
turn them loose.
Yeah, exactly. Softball toss. And he was like, I can't believe you did this to me. But he asked her the questions, and then we got into this amazing conversation. Mm-hmm. And he got to share the gospel. And she actually, this is, it doesn't happen all the time, but she was like, wow, I've never understood Christianity to be by the grace of God, and that Christ's work on the cross is sufficient. I always thought that I had to earn favor with God. And she gave her life to Christ. Yeah. And it was a really sweet moment for us. I mean, that he was overcoming his fears through that, but God honored it.
And then it just, he just took maybe one little step. He gave him that nudge. It's kind of like when I know you know this story, when I first got saved, somebody paid for me to go on a mission trip. I didn't even know what a mission trip was. Yeah. And next thing you know, I'm knocking on doors in San Francisco, and I was paired with a sophomore girl who was the shyest girl in the youth group who wouldn't even talk. So I was forced as a 2-week-old Christian just to share. And it's amazing that you just show up and just say, God, I need you. And, yes. And just as Jesus says, the words will be given you. And that's not to say we shouldn't prepare ourselves to know what to share, but a lot of times just taking that step and watching God move.
Absolutely.
All right, so some highlights from that night, if I may share some from our table. I think one of the biggest highlights was that one motivation to share and to be involved in evangelism is that you have guaranteed success. And then I said, but I have to define what success means. So we need to redefine success. Success is, just being obedient to what God has called you to do. Even if you fall flat on your face and the person, let's say, laughs, or the person says, no way, you're wrong, and walks away. I love the way you said, you just kind of put a rock in their shoe that's going to kind of maybe gnaw at them and make them think. And so you have no idea. In fact, one time I went with one of our interns across the street to eat and share my faith, and the intern was right there with me, and the guy said, I don't want anything to do with Jesus. And I kept trying to, and he just kept shutting me down. And it was really kind of volatile. But to be able to say to this intern that, look, that's not failure even that getting rejected, at the end of the day, you have no idea what the Lord's going to do. Even those questions might be in his mind down the road. So I think one big takeaway was to redefine success for everyone, because you might be part of the planting, you might be part of the watering, or you might be part of the bringing in the harvest. Amen. But even if you planted a seed, that was a success. And then the second thing that I love that our table talked about is doing evangelism in community. So one is going out together and sharing your faith, but the other is just doing life with people who are not Christians. And let's say you're sharing one day with them, and the next day they're going to a ball game with me, and maybe I'll get to share. Or even if I'm sharing, let's say, with an uncle, nobody else in my group is a part of that, but they can be a part of it and praying for me.
Absolutely.
And then when I go back and tell them the news of what happened, they're encouraged to go out to their family or neighbors and share. And so I think it's very important to be in community and letting community propel evangelism.
Absolutely.
So, what about for you?
Yeah, there was a lot of highlights for the night. I think one of mine was probably just the questions that we got to the end of the night, got to hear from different tables after they've discussed, what are good questions that help them enter into those conversations. And so we had a whole bunch of different ones. I think, it's important to remember that every worldview must answer 4 questions. And so those 4 questions are, what's the origin of the world? How are we here? Does a God or gods exist? Do they not exist? Did everything we see, was it created from nothing? The scientific impossibility. Or the second question would be, what's wrong with our world that we live in? Cancer, pain, murder. I mean, this
You look around and
horrible,
see
horrible.
the world's broken. Yeah.
It's totally broken.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so asking people, what do you think is wrong with the world that we live in? And then a third question would be, what's the solution to this problem? And then the last one would be, what's the end game, if you will? How does this story end, and what happens when we die? Is that it, or do we go on into an afterlife of some form? And we have, as Christians, we have the answers. Our worldview answers those 4 questions. There is a God.
So as you're I'm so sorry, I'm cutting
you're
you off. So as you're dialoguing with people, those are great questions to ask. What do you believe created everything? What do you believe there's a God? And hey, what do you think is wrong with the world? What do you think is our hope? And where do you think all this is headed? To ask those questions is what you're saying. In your dialogue.
Absolutely.
And so you say Christianity has the answers. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it answers the question to, God does exist, and we look around. We don't look at our church building and go, isn't that funny? This building just came together, and we don't look at human beings and be like, wow, this is amazing creation that just came together. God created everything we see. The problem with the world is that we want it to be God, and Adam and Eve took the fruit and they ate of it, and they wanting to be not just in God's image, but God's themselves and autonomous beings, and so the disconnect is that sin led to this separation, this chasm between us and God, and there's no way for us to bridge that chasm because of our sin nature. And so, what did God do as a solution? He sent Jesus Christ to dwell among us, to be fully God, fully man, and to live a perfect life that we have not lived, and then to die on the cross that we deserve for our sin. And in the resurrection, we have hope that he was the trailblazer, that we will too. We will resurrect after death and have eternal life with God. And I love when Jesus says in John 17, what is eternal life? That you know God.
So what you just walked through was God, man, Christ, response, well, somewhat.
Yeah.
And so those questions, if you want to think of it, whenever I'm sharing with someone, I'm looking for avenues to get to the gospel, or even if I'm having a dialogue. A lot of times evangelism is I'm meeting with someone, maybe I've had a relationship with them, maybe for whatever reason we're in the same workplace together, I don't know what it may be, and I'm just having a dialogue. Ask questions, those questions to get them engaging. And I'm looking for bridges to the gospel all the time. And then when I get to the gospel, it's very simple, just to think, if you will, just problem, solution, response. What's the problem? The problem of sin. Somehow you got to bring that to the forefront. What's the solution, which is Christ? And then how are we to respond to that?
Absolutely.
Which is faith.
And I think some fear can stir up just in the problem part, is we're afraid of talking about sin. And I mean, in all humility, like when I get to talk to people about the gospel, it's like, I'll tell them, I've fallen short in every area. Like the 10 Commandments, I've broken all 10.
So it's not you're a sinner.
No.
It's, man, we are sinners. Look around. Look at the result of humankind. Yeah. So it's not you, it's we are. Yeah.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. So you bring the humility piece into it.
Totally.
So let's talk about real quickly before we close, just some fun stories that we've had in sharing our faith. I think, even as I was talking about a bridge to the gospel, one fun story is that one time I was sitting on a plane, and I'm ashamed to say this, but here I am. I feel like I'm an evangelist. That's a passion of mine. That's something I feel like the Lord has given me. And I'm on this plane, and even me, there are times I'm like, Lord, I want to kind of this plane to be where I maybe rest, or I'm preparing for a sermon. And sure enough, this guy comes in, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, that guy, I feel it looks like he's a follower of Islam, which is what I was. And so I see him coming in, and I'm like, surely he's not going to sit next to me. And he did. And he sat right down next to me. And so I'm still resisting God at this point. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to study. And so I pulled out my Bible, and this guy's like, you're reading the Bible? Like really loud. And I'm like, oh, okay. So here we are in a conversation. And so I go, yeah. I go, have you read the Bible? And he goes, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to read the Bible. And I go, you don't have time? What do you do? And he goes, I'm a risk analyst. And I'm thinking, he's a risk analyst, but he doesn't have time for the Bible. Does he know how risky that situation is? So then I'm like, all right, so what's your name? And his name was this very long name, but he goes, he's from a different country. And he goes, but for short, I just go by Guna, which Guna in Farsi, in the language of Iran, where I came from, means sin. And so I'm thinking, here's a guy named Sin, all right, who's a risk analyst, and sometimes
Oh my
and so
gosh.
of course that's a fell in my lap, and I just said, brother, my name is Gonal, and he goes, really? And I go, well,
Probably
not,
the first girl I met.
yeah. I go, not really, but do you know your name means sin in Farsi? And he goes, really? And I said, you know what? The Bible teaches that I'm a sinner, which basically means to miss the mark, to not live after God's ways and go our own way. I said, I'm a horrible sinner. And I said, and so is he, and so is she, and by the way, so are you. The Bible says all of us are.
Mm.
And then from there, went to the solution. And so sometimes it's not that easy where a guy's name is Sin.
Right, yeah.
But there's a lot of times people are going through a need, people are going through a hurt,
Yeah.
people are just got some confusion, and there are things that maybe you've walked through and God has spoken to you, and those are just bridges to the gospel. So
Absolutely.
how about you? Fun
Yeah.
evangelism story?
You know, I was thinking one in particular that I was just petrified. I don't know why. This one particular day I was just really nervous to share. But I was sitting at the Starbucks right down the street from Providence, and I was actually preparing for a Bible study, to lead this Bible study. And I sit down and I'm there for like 2.5 hours. And the guy to my left had been there since before I got there, and he was playing video games on his computer for like 2.5 straight hours, like didn't blink. And so I'm sitting there, and I really felt just God's hand saying, you know, the Holy Spirit saying, look, you need to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
And he needs to know about me. And the entire time I was like, no way. Like I'm terrified. I don't want to talk to this person about Jesus. And so I actually got up, I'm ashamed to say, and left the Starbucks, got to my car, put my backpack in, and it was like the Holy Spirit just put the brakes on, like, you need to go back in there. And so I just went back in to Starbucks. I didn't know what to say. But ultimately what I did was I said, hey man, my name's Arch. I've been sitting next to you for 3 hours, and I never introduced myself. What's your name? And we got this really cool dialogue. I asked him what game he had been playing, and he describes that. And then along the way of just caring for him and getting to know him as a human being made in the image of God, I got to bridge to the gospel.
That's
And
amazing. That's
actually,
incredible.
A week and a half later, this guy gave his life to Jesus Christ. And it was
That's
no
incredible.
doing outside of me. You know, he really began to search the scriptures. So
real
encouraging.
quickly, I got to jump on that.
Yeah.
I'm at a Starbucks in seminary, right
about
next
Starbucks.
to it is, and I'm studying for my New Testament exam for seminary, and a bunch of football players walking from TCU. They all got their leather jackets on, or they're walking, and for whatever reason in that moment, I felt weird having my Bible out. I want y'all to hear this. Here I am studying to go into the ministry, and I kind of just moved my notebook over my Bible, and I felt like the Lord just convicted me with Romans 1:16. I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation for those who believe. And then so I removed it, and I put the Bible back on top, and these guys walk on, and the last guy looks down and goes, "Are you a religion major?" And I'm like, sort of.
Yeah.
And he sits down, and for the next 10 minutes starts saying about how he used to walk with Christ when he was in youth, in the youth group. Then he came to college, and he's fallen away, and he's gotten involved with this and that. And he's bawling, repenting, and saying, will you pray for me? I need to turn back. And literally, I'm sitting here going, all I've said is sort of. And this guy is just, that was evangelism. And this guy is just, and so I go, yeah, brother, let me pray for you. And I think God just humbled me there. Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed. And I think one of the things I would just say to everyone is, if you've listened, if you've made it this far, I hope you have, is at the end of the day, it's not about, are you gifted to do evangelism? Some people have a gifting and they're bent. But at the end of the day, all of us are called to do evangelism. And my strong encouragement is, if you just take a step, if you just get out there and sometimes we're afraid about what we're going to say, and we don't even do the first part of, hey, what's your name?
Yeah.
And just starting a relationship, just meeting someone, asking them questions, or praying for them, and then from there, hopefully, it would lead to being able to maybe share what God's done in your life. And so it's not about, am I gifted? It's about take a step and watch to see what God would do.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
all right, I'm excited. Saturday, we'll be praying for you as you go out
Thank you.
to share.
Thank you.
Hopefully, I'll be there with you. So,
Great.
all right, thanks for being here.